of Cholov Akum and Chemas Akum. Perek Hamishi, the fifth chapter of our studies, of Kashrus. I'd like to give a little bit of an introduction. The Torah teaches us everything about Torah is a lesson for us. Torah is Moshe Hero, guidance. And the order in which the halachas are written in the Shulchan Aruch itself is a lesson. We have the lesson itself, but the order in which it's written itself is a lesson. We start off with the laws of Pasach and bread baked by a non-Jew, and then we start off with then we go to the laws of Bishul Akum, foods cooked by a non-Jew. Then we get into the laws of Cholov Akum, milk that's milked by a non-Jew. It's progressively getting more and more strict. So it starts min hakal l'kavi, from the lighter ones to the more involved ones. Just like when it comes to the Shabbos meal, for health reasons, we eat the fish first because it's easier to digest, then we go to the heavier food, like the meat. So to spiritually, we start with a lighter thing and we move along. So the laws of Cholov Akum are stricter than the laws of Bishul Akum and Pas Akum. I'll explain to you why. Because the concern for Bishul Akum and Pas Akum is that it might come to intermarriage through the involvement and not having proper safeguards and the mingling, etc. So the concern is that this act itself is we're not worried this act itself is going to be forbidden from the Torah. We're worried that this act will lead to another act that's going to be forbidden from the Torah. So the concern is one step removed. It's a concern, but the concern is that this could lead to something that's forbidden from the Torah. When it comes to Cholov Akum, milk by a non-Jew without a Jew present, the concern is immediate. The concern is that maybe there's going to be Cholov Akum, milk from a Cholov Tameya, milk from a non-kosher animal mixed into this milk itself. So that this milk itself will be Asa Midiraisa. We'll have a mixture of Asa Midiraisa. So the concern is more immediate. That's why it's more strict in halacha. So according to all opinions, after the production or the heat production of Cholov Akum, you have to kasher the kelim. We learned in the previous subject by Bishul Akum to Machlokas. Shulchan Aruch brings down two opinions. We do follow the more strict opinion under ordinary circumstances that you do have to kasher the kelim, but it is a Machlokas. By Pas, you don't have to kasher the kelim at all from non-Pas Yisrael kosher products, from Pas Palta products. So Cholov is more strict in that regard. Now, we're also going to share with you from the spiritual perspective. The Rebbe told Rabbi Yaroslavsky, senior Levavitcher Shirav in Nachlas HaChabad Eretz Yisrael, he told it to me himself. So what I'm repeating to you is what we call a Kli Rishon al Ha'esh. I'm giving over something that was a pot on the fire itself. He was in Yechidus by the Rebbe. Giving it over. Maybe I'm just a Plisheni, but this is the Kli Rishon al Ha'esh. He told me he was in Yechidus by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe instructed him to become a Rav there. The Rebbe said the following Lashon: Chasidim Chasidim are very, very careful about Pas Yisrael and Cholov Yisrael. Cholov Yisrael is Negeya, the Neshama, the Emunah B'tochin of a Yid, has a very strong spiritual implication. The Ruch needs to decide it. And we know the famous Maisa from the brought down in the Alter Rebbe's Memor in Sefer Memor in Kutreisim. He brings down a story from the Alter Rebbe. There was a chos of Alter Rebbe, whose son-in-law, unbeknownst to him, mistakenly consumed Cholov Akum. And then he started to have all kinds of doubts in his Avodas Hashem and his Emunah B'tochin. And the father-in-law came to the Rebbe and asked the Rebbe for help him in spirituality. It was very concerning. And the Rebbe answered the father-in-law, said, your son-in-law consumed Cholov Akum b'lo yodim. And then the Rebbe gave him a tikkun. So it's very, very connected to our Emunah B'tochin, our Neshama, our Gifil, our spiritual sensitivity. The Rebbe also writes in the letters in Igas Kodesh that kasher achilu shtiyah in a mehudadik way, eating kosher food in a mehudadik way, it refines our mitzvahs, our attributes, to become more attuned, more refined, more sensitive, spiritually speaking. So it's very precious in the hallmarks of Chassidim. So we're going to learn about the halachas. We're also going to learn about how the Moshe Feinstein, who was one of the leading halachic authorities of the generation, his times, he was probably the leading one in America. He found the leniency for milk in America in countries where they have a certain amount of government oversight. That was a leniency he found in halacha, even though he himself said one should be stringent. He himself, I don't think, was lenient in this regard, as far as I know. But he found the leniency, and so there are some Yidden that follow that leniency. But we as Chassidim are very strict only to have Cholov Yisrael product. Okay? Okay, let's go inside. Cholov, Pilchis, Cholov Akum, Chemas Akum, Osru Chachamim, Cholov Shecholov Enoch, Ven Yisrael Re'eyu. Oh, I have to tell another story. You know, with me, once you open the filing cabinet, it doesn't close so fast. There's a Maisa. It's on these words. It just came to my. It'd be good. It would reconjure my memory. The Maisa which had nothing with Chernobyl. The Menachem Chernobyl was a contemporary of the Alter Rebbe. He was the Talmud of the Maggid, and he was, I guess, in the mornings his Mishadis, I guess his Dabbai would bring him some milk with some coffee or some kind of hot drink, whatever milk. And one time the Yiddish servant wasn't there, and an Andrew milked the cow. Let's follow up him. And they brought it to the Rebbe, and he didn't drink it. And they said about him was Cholov Shechalavi Nochri, milk by an Andrew Ven Yisrael Re'ehu. And the Yid didn't see it. Menachem Chernobyl didn't even see the milk in front of him, didn't see the coffee in front of him. That's how they touched the story. And literally what it means is that there's no Yid actually witnessing the milking itself. The concern is maybe something in is mixed in over there. If there was an actual credible concern that there was mixture of Cholov Tamei inside the mix here, it wouldn't have been necessary for the Chachamim to make Cholov Nafri also Kisafik Deraisa L'Chom, because we have a principle that says that anything that's a Safik Deraisa, a doubt in the Torah, we go the stringent route. We have to abstain from anything that has a possible ism from the Torah. What the kavanah rather was, lesser Cholov Shel Nachem afil beifet shachashash rachuk uketzach. To say that Cholov Nachem is also even in a situation where the cheshash is a little bit remote, somewhat remote. A person's not going to think there's anything to be concerned about. Even though this Nachi doesn't have any non-kosher animals in his herd, when the concern is a little removed. There's no Yid at the time of the milking, also you're not allowed to drink the milk.
So he just needs to see that it's
see that it's kosher, no kosher animal, see that the equipment is clean, and if anything was hot, should be kosher before, The severity of this prohibition. They were machman, it's like all forbidden foods. Therefore they wrote, someone has to drink milk. Only has Cholov Akum. They're required to spend their money to obtain Cholov Yisrael, not to stumble with this of Cholov Akum. Shekina din b'chol yisurim. That's the din with all yisurim. To make an echmiru, the also stringent in its partial Cholov Akum b'kli. If Cholov Akum got cooked in a vessel, nesra kli kilun is partial b'yachal mikol shal yisurim. The vessel becomes forbidden to use, just like any other vessel would be if it was cooked with other forbidden foods. Any questions so far? Okay, now, I'm going to get into another detail about the halachos. There's a difference of opinion in the halachic authorities whether this is just an isser kashashit of the rice, and maybe some non-kosher milk was mixed into this mix of milk. Or there was also on top of that, there's also a rabbinic prohibition. They said any milk that a Jew didn't see the milking is not allowed to be consumed. because there's a concern. Maybe they'll mix in milk from a non-kosher animal. And therefore they made a prohibition, even in a place where there is no concern, because they made a blanket prohibition. So the Svar is Rashni, according to the second opinion, the Vat Chashashit to the rice, besides for the Chashashit to the rice, though, Yesh Begazir the Rabban Gamkin. There's also a rabbinic prohibition. Anafkamina ben Atamim, Yia b'mokim Shem Machshish Kalal, so Manachli Yir Bechol Tambe. The nafkamina would be in a place where there's no concern, maybe the non-Jew mixed in Cholov Akum. For example, the Mashal. Ir Shein Behemis Tameyes. You have a city that doesn't have any non-kosher animals, or you can have an island like that, where they vet everything coming through. Shein Lochosh Balaterev Cholov Akum. Im Neimesh Dama Yisur Mak Mishum Mitzvah Tzedaiso. If the whole reason for is predicated on the concern, oh, maybe they're going to mix in non-kosher milk here. In a place where you don't have this concern, why should it be us to put Cholov Akum? There's no concern here. If we're in a city now, or we're in an island, which we'll call a kosher island, it only has kosher animals. But if the reason for the prohibition is because of a rabbinic prohibition, they said any milk from a non-Jew is also sometimes is a forbidden mixture in Kenu Vat Chashash Cholov Akum. Besides the concern of Cholov Akum, there's also an outright rabbinic prohibition, lesser Cholov Shel Nachri, to forbid milk from a non-Jew. Even in a certain circumstance, but there's nothing to be concerned about. We cannot permit Cholov Akum because rabbinic prohibition remains in place and in force. And Mela, a city that does not have any non-kosher animal, according to the first way of learning, there's no problem with Cholov Akum because there's no concern of milk from the raisa getting mixed in, and therefore it's not a problem. According to the second way of learning, because it's a rabbinic prohibition that they gave a blanket prohibition under all circumstances. Now, the next two halachas are going to talk about how we actually follow. So, halacha dal, with the yesh lishol, we can ask the question: so if the reason for the prohibition is no longer applicable if you're in a place that doesn't have any non-kosher animals, why should the milk become awesome? The tshuva is, the answer is shaklal nimtza biyadenu. We have a principle given over to us. Anything that the rabbis prohibited with the Sanhedrin, and they said our asa for a certain reason, and the takana spread forth in all Jewish communities. Even if the reason for why it was enacted is nullified, the issa remains in force. And a bezin that comes later doesn't have the koyach levatal devrayim to nullify their words. Elim kin bezin that hasheni godel manarishim. Thus, the second bezin is greater than the first one. Well, yes.
Why did Chazal enact the prohibition that even if there are no non-kosher animals, you can't?
No, that's not what the prohibition. The prohibition is you're not allowed to drink milk without Jew being present, because the concern is maybe they'll mix a non-kosher milk, but they gave a blanket prohibition in all cases.
Right. So what they just did that as an extra.
That's how they gave the prohibition. The reason for the prohibition was because the concern of mixing a non-kosher milk, but the prohibition itself was blanket. You're not allowed to do it. It's like saying you're not allowed to do a certain thing because there's a certain danger. Doesn't mean every time you do it, there'll be the danger, but you're not allowed to do it because of the danger. And the bezin that comes in the next generation doesn't have the power to nullify their words. Unless in stature, the second bezin coming in the next generation is greater. And we know with the going down of every generation, we get weaker on a spiritual level. So therefore, we cannot nullify that. Halacha hey, halacha nogo ko b'nei Ashkenaz. The Yidden of Ashkenaz have the custom kidei ashniya, like the second opinion, less of Cholov Akum b'chol makom afshein l'chashesh l'chol tamei, to make Cholov Akum prohibited even in a place where you don't have a concern about Cholov tamei. Came das reib gedei l'achreinim shein l'chol b'zeh. Most of the achreinim said that we shouldn't be lenient unless a person has, unless it was from a place where they had the custom to be lenient. They gave another reason to be stringent, called Gezedas Chazal, because all prohibitions that the rabbis enacted, besides the reason that they gave for their enactment, they had many other reasons that they didn't want to reveal. There are many levels and many layers. It's infinity. Torah. Even if we don't see a reason, there may be other reasons that we don't know that are still applicable. Therefore, we cannot permit Cholov Akum in any situation. Even if you live in a place, like a country where the non-Jewish population doesn't drink milk from a non-kosher animal, they won't do that. Because they find it to be something despicable. One should not be lenient with regards to Cholov Akum. Can I ask someone to give me a cup of water, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. The next halacha, I'm just going to introduce, I'm not going to start until you come back, is going to talk about the heta from Rabbi Feinstein. Rabbi Feinstein was the leading halachic authority in America. Passed away, I believe, in 1986 or in the mid-80s. And he was a world-renowned halachic authority. He lived in the Lower East Side, by the way. So in the 1950s, he had people writing him all kinds of questions. Judaism was just sort of in its infancy in America. I mean, out for many years already, but it was becoming more established. And there were Yidden that needed to drink milk. The kids needed for the calcium, whatever it is. So they wrote it would be possible to drink milk that's milked not Cholov Yisrael, because they couldn't get Cholov Yisrael where they lived. And the reason why they were asking the question was because in America, there's some sort of government oversight that says that if you're going to call it cow juice or milk, right, it has to come from a cow. Can't come from a non-kosher animal. So that was the premise for the question. We'll learn soon in a moment that Moshe found a heter for such milk, and he called it Cholov Stam, actually. Cholov Akum refers to milk that's milked by an non-Jew, it's not permissible. He said that this milk is called Cholov Stam, plain milk. It's not like Cholov Yisrael, it doesn't have the same spiritual value, but said that Cholov Stam could be consumed in a place where one cannot get Cholov Yisrael if it's from an established country like America, where they have a certain amount of government oversight. That's stipulated, yeah.
That's OEB?
Yeah. Right. Okay, you also certify such products as the Chafke or the National Shem certified dairy non-Cholov Yisrael product. If you want to know that the product is Cholov Yisrael, that's the say Cholov Yisrael on the label itself. So we're going to call this Pikuach Memshalti, which refers to government oversight.
Oh, I wanted to say,
Right.
because Shira messaged something about posting my mother and I said things like that, and she's just wondering if you find a message.
Yeah, tell her I want to speak to her on the phone. Ask her to, I want to speak to her. Thank you. So now we're going to, I'm going to make sure you didn't miss anything. So we just gave an overview that Moshe Feinstein, who was the halachic, leading halachic authority in America, he gave a certain permissibility for the consumption of non-Cholov Yisrael in America because there's a certain amount of government oversight.
But that was based on circumstance, right? Initially. Or
It was based on circumstances where it was difficult to get hold of Yisrael, and the person really needed it. Different circumstances. Yes, when someone writes a Shiloh to a Rav, they're in a situation that's not regular. They have a situation they have to deal with. So the Rav is trying to find what can be done for them. So let's look at it inside and understand where this is coming from. Because it helped this landmark Shvat from Rav Moshe had a very big impact on America, on how things are approached, and it had impact in both ways. We'll see in a moment. Cholov Akum shenimta kayem b'Aretz Habris. Look today in America. Nasa idei machlobes gedolos. They're made in large creameries. Shemeiches alfei bakbuki cholov. They sell thousands of bottles of milk. V'imdim tachas pikuach namshalti. Under the government oversight. A lot of cholov it's made. It says you're not allowed to mix in milk from a non-kosher species animal. It's not allowed. It's against the law. Even though if someone did so, the fine wouldn't be that great. The government sends, I guess, inspectors, and they can give them a fine. Most poskim say you shouldn't be lenient about this. There's also pidin in attention is brother ill. Cholov Akum netza b'minyan haSanhedrin. Because Cholov Akum is also became also to the minyan of Sanhedrin. We don't have the koyach to nullify the takana. There is someone who we have from our generation, meaning the Moshe Feinstein, that he found a way to be matir milk today, in America. Even though a Jew is not overseeing it, through the concern about mixing in milk from a non-kosher animal, concern that maybe the government would punish them. We're sure that they didn't mix in any cholov tamei, because there's a concern they can get caught. The nechshav kiloro yisrael tzachaliva. These are key words. Because there's a certain amount of deterrence, it's like the Yid saw it. You can't be matir something but you didn't see it, because it says the Yid has to see it. So Moshe is saying because there's a certain amount of government oversight, and they're going to get fined. So it's like a Jew seeing it. According to Rav Moshe's words, this is better than a place that doesn't have any non-kosher animals. Is he old? It's not in the gather of milk. It was milk by a non-Jew, and a Jew didn't see it. Shas Chazal. After Rabbi Simchon al Devarav, and then he rely on his words. Literally, Cholov Kayem Shnochem Kayem. Roy Lem Ludat should know. Ki hitter the Rakapidin Lemishrei the Rakabada. But Moshe was not to this. He permitted this. Alpidin for those that want to be lenient. Aval Chosaf Shroy Lebal Nefesh Leben Torah. He writes it about Ben Torah and about Nefesh. To be stringent, look that a Jew was only there by the Khalifa. Be strict, only to have Cholov Yisrael. He writes that. Place that were outlying areas, they were very difficult to find Cholov Yisrael. According to Rabbi Moshe, you don't have to be stringent upon yourself. According to his contemporary authorities in Halacha, other great rabbis of that generation, they were not lenient about this. So this is the foundation of what happened over here. Rabbi Moshe found that happened, and he said if a person's in a place where we can't get Cholov Yisrael, in an established country with a certain amount of government oversight, then al pi din they could be lenient and have non-Cholov Yisrael, even though he writes that a Ben Torah, a person who wants to be scrupulous should be careful not to do this. He says, if he did, a person's allowed to. But at the same time, all his contemporary colleagues of Rabbanim with his stature, great Rabbanim, the Poskim and the Halakha authorities, they disagreed with him about this matter. They didn't hold this way, so he was the only one who held this way. So even so, Rav Moshe himself writes that the Ben Torah should be stringent and not consume Cholov Akum, as he calls it. Should only have Cholov Yisrael. It's interesting to see a response he gave to a certain organization, a school, a yeshiva. They asked, do they have to buy Cholov Yisrael milk for their students? It costs more money. It's going to add up. And the financial straits of the school were soft. Nice way of saying, they weren't sitting on big coffers of money. They're allowed to buy all of Nochri that's found. The Heishav, and he says, the Moshe said they should buy Cholov Yisrael. They should not be concerned about the loss of money, because their duty, what's their duty? How a Ben Torah should be stringent. From anything that has a chashash history. According to the other poskim, machmirim calls it posher. It's obvious. So according to their words, even Cholov Nochi today is also pidin. Any questions? So the net result we have is Rav Moshe was matir in halacha, even though he said that it's better to be stringent, that Ben Torah should be stringent, and he himself was careful not to do so. At the same time, his colleague Rabbanim of his stature in his generation, they disagreed with him. So Rav Moshe was a das yachid, the only one who felt this way, but he was a great man. Yes.
So why is it even though the text says like you could only get you call out them if you're in a place where you can't necessarily find clothes not so much, but now I've lived in many communities, they can find clothes so close to them, they still be called off them.
Right.
Why is that?
It's part of, there's an expression, once you open up the gate, it's hard to close them. And you're right. One could question the validity of a certain person buying non-Cholov Yisrael if they're living in a place where Cholov Yisrael is right near them. There is a certain amount of framework of what's considered to be near you. We had that regarding pot, right? Within the shear of a meal, 20 minutes travel. But it is obtainable. Now, if a person can't get out, but yes, you're right. It is a question that those people should grapple with. Now, the next thing is about butter. Butter is very interesting. Because first of all, when I say the old days, I say years ago, I remember this as a kid. Butter was pure butter, didn't have any ingredients added to it. Today, they add other ingredients to butter. You can add whey, which is a byproduct of the cheese-making process, which, by the way, no pun intended, could be not kosher, because if the whey is made from cheese that's hot, and the whey comes off hot, non-kosher cheese, it makes the whey not kosher. So there's no way you could use it, unintended. Just trying to, okay, anyway. Sorry, it's getting a little too much. But whey is actually a byproduct, and also they pass certain laws that you're not allowed to dump the whey water. And it's environmental concerns, you have to treat the water. So necessity is the mother of invention. So these manufacturers, they found a method. See, I didn't use the word whey now. I said they found a method to actually dry the whey, turn it into powder, and sell it off as a protein source. So it's a byproduct which they were going to have to throw away. So instead of paying the cost of throwing it away, they dried it. And now they have, on the market, you see tons of dried whey. Dried whey makes its way into many products. A lot of cookies that used to be part before these laws turned dairy because they put it for the cookies, put it anyway. It's a cheap substance, and then the companies can market it. It's got protein in it, whatever it is. And it also made its way into butter. That's been said, that's one of the reasons why, according to all opinions, butter needs a hechsher today. And butter could theoretically become not kosher if it has whey from a non-kosher cheese that was of appreciable temperature. So it changed the dynamics. So this is just a very interesting illustration of when laws change in the food manufacturing place, right? When laws change, it has a ripple effect on kashrus. This had a very big effect on it. A lot of products that previously were parve had to go dairy. They couldn't be certified. And people, I remember this happened about 15, 20 years ago, and consumers were like, why are these cookies? My favorite cookies are no longer parve. Well, right? And it still happened. But it's a byproduct, so it's actually cheap, and it finds its way into dog food also. It's very common. It goes into dog food, which gets into the Shabbat Basel Cholov. We said that probably it's not using shechted meat. It's better to use dog food that has only from fowl for that reason. Okay, so now we're getting into chama into butter. So pure butter. I want to give a little bit of more of an introduction. Pure butter itself has very interesting properties. Only milk from a kosher animal could curd and turn into butter. Milk from a non-kosher animal, just due to the way its properties are, could not turn into butter, will not curd and turn into butter. So when you see butter, you actually have a visible, recognition, this is coming from kosher milk. So according to one opinion, when the Goyim says, okay, so non-kosher butter, butter itself does not, you don't need to call this all butter, because it's butter, it came from kosher milk. It's good. You have your sign there, right? You have your identity, so to speak. According to the second opinion, there's a concern. Maybe the non-Jew had in mind to take this milk and I don't know, put a non-kosher milk in there, and then they changed their mind. They said they're going to turn it to butter. So there'll be some non-kosher milk inside the butter. Now it's true that it wouldn't curd, it wouldn't turn into butter, but it might stay in little pockets in there. So they said there's still a concern. According to that opinion, butter would need a hechsher, right? These are two opinions. I just want to show you that butter in halacha is easier than milk, because butter does have a telltale sign that it's not butter, it's coming from kosher sources. We tell another story. What do you say? The Geschmack story about Cholov Yisrael. Oh, unbelievable story. Many stories of Cholov Yisrael. There's another one that just came to mind. I'll start with this one. I have a neighbor who told me this story. He said he has a relative who's not Lubavitch, religious people. And his niece was in a family, religious family, lived from a religious community where Cholov Yisrael was available, I think. And the niece, the daughter, she developed a skin condition, terrible skin condition that was not curable. The doctors couldn't figure it out; they couldn't deal with it. So unbeknownst to the father and the family, the two uncles who were Lubavitch, they took the girl's name and the mother's name, and they wrote to the Rebbe. This story happened like 40 years ago, 45 years. They wrote to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, check regarding Cholov Yisrael in the home. So when they reported the story after they got the answer to the Rebbe, they told the relative, who was not Lubavitch, but he expected the Rebbe. So, we go to the Rebbe to try and get your daughter a refuah. And he listened. He switched over to Cholov Yisrael, and the skin condition totally disappeared. When the girl became got engaged and got married, by the chuppah, the father thanked Hashem for the miracle. Didn't thank the bracha. He didn't say that the Rebbe didn't mention that, but he thanked Hashem for the miracle. That's one story about Cholov Yisrael. There's another story. There was a woman, a Lubavitcher woman, who told the story over on a podcast. I'm passing it over. This is like 60 years ago. She lived in a place where Cholov Yisrael was totally not available. And I don't know why. She tells the story. She was drinking alcohol, so fine, whatever. That's what was going on. And she was cooking before Shabbos, and she burnt her hand terribly. And the Rebbe said to keep Cholov Yisrael. So we see from these stories that the Rebbe connected not our spiritual health. That we're going to get to in a moment. The Rebbe connected that one's physical health, physical well-being with Cholov Yisrael. The profound effect on us. Connect to what we said earlier from the letter of the Rebbe, that eating food, kosher, in a mohudic way has a profound effect on us. It literally, physically, it alters us for the positive. The last story, I'll say Achin Chav. It's a longer story. The story I heard recorded from Rabbi Mangel. And Mangel is the senior Lubavitcher of Fahrenheit, the Holocaust survivor. He's an expert. He's a genius of a person, a tremendous scholar, but also an expert in things like the New Testament. And the Rebbe sent people to him when there were issues like this that came up. The Rebbe sent people to him to talk things through and to straighten them out. When my father came to Lubavitch, he wasn't involved in the New Testament, my father, but he had questions, fundamental questions, what it means to be a Yid. The Rebbe sent my father to Rabbi Mangel. There's an expression in the Torah, Torah returns to its host. So the Rebbe sent my father to Rabbi Mangel, yes, and he put my father, set him on the path. And now Rabbi Magel's children that are shluchim ask me kashrus questions because the Torah is returning to its hosts because their father is the one who set my father straight, set him on the path. Anyway, back to our story. So Rabbi Magel, there was a story. There was a family of Ger Hasidim. They survived the Holocaust, and they had one child. He's a Ben Zikunim. A child born in the parents were older. And they lived in Williamsburg and they kept Cholov Yisrael. And it was a boy. And then, for various reasons, they moved to Flatbush. This is in the 1950s. And there, getting Cholov Yisrael was not as easy as Williamsburg. In those days, it wasn't so easy. It wasn't so obtainable. And they lived in an apartment building. And they stopped keeping Cholov Yisrael. Long story short, the son grew up, he was an engineer, very smart boy. And he got married, and the mother was extremely attached to her son, the only child, the Holocaust survivors. And unfortunately, the marriage didn't last. They didn't have any children. I don't know the details exactly why, but didn't last. And the boy ended up moving back to his parents' house. And became very depressed because his whole life was turned over. So in order to calm his nerves or to deal with his pain, to massage his pain, he listened to the radio. And there was a preacher called Sonny Jones who was preaching, and he got schlepped into this. He got schlepped into the New Testament. And eventually he started going to the cloister, the church, and he went to meetings, and he met a non-Jewish woman, and he wanted to marry her. So he anyway, so then the father got alarmed. He realized this was getting out of control. So he wrote to the Rebbe. He reached the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said this case should be handled by Rabbi Mangel. So Rabbi Mangel was arranged for this young man to meet with Rabbi Mangel, and he came with a suitcase full of books from the New Testament. And